3. Hey, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of these crazy people who just keep talking about meat and eating meat and how meat's going to save the world, and we can't stop talking about it. We can't shut up about it. Today, we're doing another probably multi-article takedown of all the rubbish that we see out there, of the hogwash science, pseudoscience, stuff we suspect is based on epidemiology instead of hard science or real science. So anyways, we got a couple articles to take down, but I just want to thank everybody for showing up. We get to see Brooke for again, and hasn't been too long for Becky, and we got Charmaine's here, and Ray's here, and Bart's here, and Justin's not here. What a pipe.
So let's rag on Justin since he's not here.
Yeah, the pick on Justin night. So like always, if you have any complaints, make sure and send them to Justin. He's the complaint department. So anyways, would you guys how about I share an article? I think we've all reviewed them, and then we can just start tearing into it, because I know we all got a lot to say about it. Can you guys see it on the screen?
Yep.
This is all news buzz. In case working out consistently, why shouldn't follow low carb diet like keto or carnivore? I mean, obviously they're calling us out because it says carnivore right in the title. So this is from February 6th, 2021.
Pretty recent.
What's that?
Pretty recent.
Yeah, pretty recent. We don't have to dig into the past to find these things. That they're still coming out fresh all the time. So normally Justin reads these things because he's got that comic flair when he does it, but I'll just start it off here with from keto to flesh eater, paleo to Atkins. There are a lot of diets that require eating low carb, and keeping in mind that a significant number of these weight control plans, so they're all boiled down to weight control plans here. I find that interesting. Well-known wellness fans, removing carbs of your eating regime is really hindering for individuals who work out a great deal. All right, well, we could go right there.
This is so scientific.
Yeah. I know Ray works out. I know Bart's getting back into it, and he used to work out. Becky, I don't know. What's your exercise routine like?
Chasing Daker kiddos all day long.
Right? Chasing little...
What's that, Raymond?
Oh, I'm sorry. Stop the share, Tom, so we can see.
Okay. Bam.
There we go.
But yeah, I chase Daker kiddos all day long. I also live on a farm, so I end up and do.
So you hardly move around at all, is what you're saying, right?
No, I'm very sedentary.
And Brooke, what are you doing these days?
I'm doing a little running. I'm doing some tennis and hiking, and sometimes I'm not doing any of those things.
And Charmaine's our token CrossFitter, so we've seen her running through the wilderness with a log on her shoulders more than once. So, and then doing the monkey bars like no human being should be able to do. So she might be some sort of...
She is cheating a bit, Tom, because she doesn't weigh anything.
She is a little bit smaller than most of it.
Not by much.
She might technically be less than a third my size, but
whoa.
Whoa, dangerous.
And Ray does Orange Theory, karate, and jiu-jitsu, because karate or jiu-jitsu wasn't enough. Wasn't enough.
Yeah.
So has anybody noticed a decline in their ability to work out, chase children, run a farm,
lift weights,
submit other people in jiu-jitsu? Anybody?
I can tell you I couldn't do any of this before. How about that?
There you go. I mean, the deal, guys, here is really, really simple to kind of take the wind out of the sails of this whole argument. Gluconeogenesis is the term. That's the only thing we need to say in response to that. People that say you can't exercise without eating carbohydrates do not understand human physiology. They do not understand the science. They think that because it is an absolute fact that muscle contractions are powered by glucose. You cannot contract muscles without glucose. End of. Okay, you must have glucose if you expect muscles to work. Absolutely. But that doesn't mean you have to eat glucose, because your body is capable of manufacturing all the glucose it requires itself from non-glucose precursors. For example, lactate, glycerol backbones from triglycerides, and there are several gluconeogenic amino acids as well. So there's that one done. No, you don't have to eat carbohydrates to have carbohydrates. Yes, you need carbohydrates to exercise. No, you don't have to eat them to get them. Done.
Saying that same argument would go for you don't need to eat before you work out either, right?
Correct.
Makes sense, right?
And I also want to add, because they use the scientific phrase that they're working out a great deal. I wanted to just mention that the reality is, when you're not eating a lot of carbohydrates, your recovery is 100 times better. And so if you're really wanting to work out a great deal and you want to work out the next day, well, if you're not eating a diet full of carbohydrates, you have a very good chance of being able to do that.
So let's just ask the crowd, just for the sake of argument, Brooke, in a given day, how many grams of carbohydrate would you say that you take in? Just a ballpark on average.
Well, if I eat a bunch of liver pate, since there are some carbohydrates in liver, I don't know how many there are, but there might be some in there. But other than that, unless I'm having, I don't know, scallops or something, it's a moot point. I mean, there's.
So suffice to say, less than 20 grams, right?
Oh yeah, way less than 20.
God.
Probably less than 10.
Ray, how many?
Oh God, that's a tough one. So if I have eggs, I guess, and which is rare, maybe a gram. Wait, is that what it's in one egg? I don't know how much
Roughly,
carbs. Yeah. So
Is it?
is it
0.9.
0.9? Okay, yeah. So I mean, there is carbs in eggs, for example. But that's probably the most carbs I get. Cheese. Cheese has carbs, right?
Some.
Yeah, it could. It could if it hasn't been converted. Yeah.
Okay.
So milk. There's
gotta count that.
milk, right? So.
Yeah.
Becky,
Yeah.
what do you say? Well, rough idea. How many would you say you're taking in a day?
On a typical day, 5 grams or less. I can say this quickly because I'm the tracker. Typically on a given day. Now those 5 grams end up and do come from animal sources, like Brooke was saying. I do still incorporate eggs. I still have liver, so it is animal source. There is no, like bread type carbs or the complex type carbs. They're all animal source carbs.
Charmaine, sugar-free self-care specialist. How many grams of carbohydrate would you say you typically consume?
Well, I'm not like 100% carnivore right now.
That's cool.
Might be like 30, 35 total.
So in the world of carbohydrate consumption, on the low side, we could safely say, right? And you probably consume the most out of anybody here.
Yeah.
Right.
I'm like, oh, I eat too much.
Right. And Bart, since you've cut back on beer and pizza, what would you say your average intake is now?
Yeah, I took on a coach for January to do 100% carnivore in January, and he's sitting right beneath me.
Well,
Raymond. Yeah, Raymond was my coach for all of January, so I averaged less than 5 grams a day for all of January.
Wow.
February, it's actually March the 1st here in New Zealand today, so February's done with, and I can tell you that I averaged around 50 for February, which is probably a bit more than I would like. In fact, it definitely is. So I'm resetting myself to go very, very clean in March, and I've got some goals to get certain things happening. Like I want to be able to show a 6-pack by the end of it. And so I've been working on that for a couple of months now. And so by the end of 3 months, the middle month, February, wasn't so compliant, but watch this space.
And when you say 6-pack, you're not talking about an IPA.
No, I'm not. I'm not talking about beer. No. Yeah.
Pilsner free.
Mm.
All right. So, I mean, just for the sake of argument, I just want to point out that, all of us do some sort of activity. I know, I think Bart, he likes to kayak and wrestle sharks. So,
Yeah.
that's not quite doing Orange Theory and jujitsu and karate every day, but, it's getting close, right? So, and none of us noticed that, because I literally go to the gym every day now. I lift every day, and I don't know. I literally have to watch the clock, because sometimes when I don't have any pressure on my schedule, my work schedule or whatever, I'll stay there a long time just lifting and lifting, and I'll do small rotations for like, from one weight set to the other, and I'll just go through all three if there's nobody in my way, and I'll do crazy numbers of sets sometimes. And I could have never done that before. So I don't know why all these people are always saying, "Oh, there's not enough glycogen in your muscles. You got to rebuild it," or, you do some weightlifting and you got to slam a Coca-Cola to put that sugar back in and stuff. Because your liver does a perfectly good job of making enough glucose to make sure those muscles are working, right?
Right. And I do want to say with that, Tom, because I was really, because I've been a Spartan racer and like a CrossFit athlete, and doing like actual like half marathons and full marathons and ultra marathons. So I did that a lot before I was keto and after I was keto.
Mhm.
And I think the thing is, when you are in this like fitness culture, because I used to be a personal trainer too, and there's like this culture of like what is proper food to eat, and like with the racing culture, a lot of the things that you're really just taught to eat that everyone accepts is true is that you need to fuel with sugar, like those gels and all that stuff, like every 15 minutes, and that's just the way to do it, and like nobody questions it. It's just like the accepted truth. And then I did this race like in 2017. It was like an ultra marathon with obstacles. It's called the Spartan Ultra Beast, 30 miles with obstacles. I have a 15-hour time cap. And then I failed in that year in 2017 because I was eating so much sugar and I was so tired. Like I was exhausted, and I ate all the jelly beans and all that stuff every 15 minutes, and I was too exhausted to continue. But then a year later, after I was keto, I did the same race, but I was like working out fasted. I would only eat if I was actually hungry. So that one I did with hardly any eating, and then I got second place in my age group in the podium.
Wow.
Oh man, that's awesome. Wow, that proves it right there.
You're now my hero again. Holy cow.
Yeah,
I had
that's
to
great.
just bump
Wow.
somebody else off the list. Wow.
Awesome.
It's so true. And I think, when I was reading that article, it was almost like I would have said, well, I think it's kind of the opposite. If you're working out, you could just live on fat. In fact, you don't really have to worry about it. I mean, of course you're eating not just fat, but if you're not working out, maybe that's when you can have, maybe that's when your body can handle the interference of carbohydrate more. I did this funny thing a few days ago, about 4 or 5 days ago, and I took like a little bit of honey. I hadn't eaten, woke up, hadn't eaten. I was going to work out fasted. I was going to go play tennis and go for like a short run or something. And I had been, we've all been reading about honey. So I took a little bit of honey just to see. Well, I mean, it was like a half a teaspoon. It was that small amount in some water. And I bonked playing tennis. I all of a sudden felt like hypoglycemic and just sort of like, and I hadn't felt that in years. And so it's sort of like, well, that didn't work out at all. So I'd have to throw this at that article. I mean, I'm fat adapted. If I've eaten a lot, another time I didn't eat at all, and I ate just a ton of fat, more fat than usual the day before. And I was kicking ass out there on the court. So
Yeah, I don't want to say that there's no place for carbohydrates for nobody out there, but for most people, they don't seem to need them at all. I follow guys like Brian Shaw. He's a strongman competitor, and he's a gigantic human being. And guys like that, frequently they eat a lot of white rice and stuff with their food because they can't get enough calories in without it. And then guys like Zach Bitter, he's an ultra marathoner, so he's running over 100 miles, or he's running for 24 hours straight, or something insane like that. And they will supplement with carbohydrates to some degree. But then you got carnivore marathon runners who don't eat or drink the entire marathon, 26.2 miles, right? It's insane, right?
Well, I was gonna say, look at Michelle Hearn. She's an ultra marathoner
Right.
and ends up and is fueled on a carnivore lifestyle.
Well, and I know Zach Bitter, ultra marathon, has mentioned as many times that the real trick to him seems to be doing as little digesting as possible while you're racing. So, clearly people run farther and better on fat. So the more fat that they can run on, the less food they have to consume while they're racing, and the less food they have to consume, the less digestion, the less likely you are to, have to hurl or get disaster pants, as some people call it.
Well, I think that's what the reason of those gels too, because there's no digestion. You just taking glucose or sucrose that way. So it just, and I think maybe in those, in a marathon, long runs, you could supplement. I think, and he does a little bit during. He doesn't do that while he's training, though.
Yeah.
This article didn't talk about long distance marathon. Didn't talk
No,
about
but I bring it up because I think a lot of us are aware of people like the Zach Bitters and the Brian Shaws and on and on and on, because these people fascinate us. That they do these crazy superhuman things, but it seems like most of the people that need that are in that superhuman fringe, far extraordinary performance kind of area before they need it. So.
Well, that's actually I was thinking along a different way about that when I read that article. I sort of thought, well, there's certainly some usefulness in including carbohydrates in your diet, but I was thinking more along, maybe times of pregnancy or thyroid problems, where you might want to include small amounts of carbohydrate, almost as medicinal carbohydrate use, but it wouldn't take over a great part of your diet.
Yeah, I think Gabrielle Lyons, she's a doctor and avid carnivore, but I think she said during her pregnancy she found that some carbohydrate help reduce her morning sickness or something like that. So it's a good point.
I want to mention, wasn't it Feeney and Volek's study about, I don't know if you guys remember this, where he took some cyclers and he made them just squish some sweet drinks in their mouths and then spit it out, and notice how their performance increased just from that. So question is this a total neurological effect? Does it really do something for the body? So that's what we need to ask, right? Bart would be probably the person to talk to about that. I don't really know.
Right. So I'm well aware of that Volek study, and I was actually involved personally in another study that was done at University of Auckland a few years back as well, which just kind of ties in. And in that study, what we did was give athletes an artificial sweetener. So no carbohydrates, no digestible carbohydrates to be had, just a sweet tasting fluid. And obviously there was another control situation where they were given another thing that tasted the same that actually was carbohydrate as well, a control, if you like, or a placebo. In both instances, whether they had actual carbohydrates or whether they had artificial sweetener, both situations led directly to an increase in power output almost immediately on a cycle, because the brain gets a message, there's a sweet taste in your mouth on the tongue. That message goes to the brain. The brain says, okay, there's a sweet taste on the tongue. That means carbs coming. That means we don't have to be so sparing, and we can open up the throttle a bit more and allow more power, reduce the feeling of fatigue, allow the athlete to output a bit more power. So it didn't matter if it was sugar or artificial sweetener. Both led to power output increase. But here was the other thing that we found that was also quite an interesting thing and a kicker as well. In both situations, that athlete released insulin.
Really?
Both sugar and no sugar. The sweetness was enough to send to the brain. Brain thinks there's sugar. Brain sends a message to release insulin. So that athlete that had fake sugar crashed and burned horribly because they got an insulin release, but they got no carbohydrate.
Wow.
Right.
Hey, Bart,
So those, yep, go on.
do you think that if that, since that study was done while people were working out, cycling or whatever, do you think that it would have been different if they were sedentary at that time? What do you think? One of the reasons is because they were in some kind of stress load, because I know people have tested different sugar substitutes and some raise their blood.
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked. I'm really glad you asked that, because part of that particular project, we had all those athletes do the exact same thing, either sugar or simulated sugar, while sitting stationary in the lab as well, to see if we got the same insulin response, and we did.
You did.
Absolutely.
So those people that think, okay, let's have simulated sugar because it doesn't release insulin because there's no carbohydrates. Sorry, bad news for you. Yes, it does.
Which artificial sweeteners did you use?
It was a mixture between xylitol, which I know is not good anyway, and stevia.
With stevia, huh?
And then, we didn't publish it, but we also did some looking at some other different sugars, fake sugars as well, I should say. Phenylalanine was one that we used, for example, all of those, cancer-causing ones, apparently. So it didn't matter which one we gave them. The thing that we were quite convinced by the end of it was setting off the insulin release was not particularly what the substance was. It was purely that it was interpreted by the brain as, this tastes sweet, therefore the brain thinks carbohydrate is coming. And so it releases insulin.
Yep.
And if I'm not mistaken, there's more than one mechanism that will release insulin, right? So it's not just taste, but taste.
Yeah, but that's one that can do it all by itself. Yeah.
Wait, now there's also isn't there also a pain tolerance that affects, it lowers pain tolerance? Is that right?
Yep.
Fascinating.
What lowers the pain tolerance? What were you saying?
If you give an athlete either sugar or indeed fake sugar, in the short term, if they're cycling or exercising submaximally or something like that, their rate of perceived exertion goes down. The body thinks, okay, sugar's coming, it's fine. One of the things that the body does to regulate your exercise output is that it gives you a sense of discomfort. That's why you feel, when you're getting up towards near your maximum maintainable exercise intensity, that's what that discomfort is. That's what that burning sensation is. That's what that sensation of tiredness is. That's what the brain fog that can happen is. That's your body kind of limiting you, saying you don't push any harder than this, because if you do, you might get in trouble. You give that athlete sugar and their brain goes, okay, sugar's coming, so now I can release those feelings. Those feelings are not real. They are your brain just limiting your output so that you remain within the working range, I guess, if that makes sense.
And in their case, the insulin release was helpful in their performance.
Yes, short term, until in the case where the athletes had no sugar, until the insulin then dragged the blood sugar down even lower because there was no carbs coming. And then
Right.
those guys crashed and burned horribly. And their end performance, they fatigued more quickly, their power went down at the end, and they ended up producing less work for the session than the guys that had the actual sugar, which, by the way, were the same guys, because we did crossover. They were each their own controls, random order crossover trial. They didn't know what they were getting, and neither did we. So there was no way there was any kind of bias on it. That's one of the things you do when you're doing research projects. So anyway, there you go. Incredible stuff.
So for performance, if you're going to have a sweet taste, if you're going to have sugar, make it real sugar.
Yep. Although what we find in athletes, and this is another inside line for you from someone like myself who is an exercise physiologist, actually, first and foremost, athletes who do not consume carbohydrates typically, and who go through a full metabolic adaptation, which, by the way, is 20 plus or minus 6 weeks for a full adaptation. That's why most athletes won't do it, because they're going to have a performance slump for a few months. And if they're competitive athletes, they go, I don't want to go through that. I'll just keep eating sugar. But if they're prepared to go through that, and trust me that they will come out not only as good, if not better, and those athletes that do go through that adaptation period properly, those guys are actually kicking butt. They are destroying their carved up athlete competitors. And you don't hear about these particular athletes very much. You hear about a few of them who are prepared to say something, but most athletes who don't eat carbs won't tell anyone. I'll tell you why not. Because that's their competitive advantage.
Oh.
They are absolutely kicking ass, and they don't want their competitors to know. So they just pretend they're still eating a bunch of carbs. Yeah, I still eat carbs. Of course I eat carbs. You got to eat carbs to exercise, you know. Of course they're going to say that.
Gosh.
But as I say, I've worked with athletes at the absolute top echelons, at the elite level. So I know who's really doing what. And unfortunately, I'm not allowed to say because it's a confidentiality issue. But I can tell you there are 1 or 2 top athletes who do not touch carbohydrates. And I don't just mean power athletes. I mean endurance athletes as well. So
Wow.
across the board. So
To say, I know there's a football player that is fueled by meat and fat alone because he's carnivore and he plays for Kansas City Chiefs. And they went to, the Super Bowl. So last year.
low carb cider, by the way, Ray. Low carb cider.
I hear you. Better than that coffee, right, Bart?
Yeah. I haven't touched coffee since December 31st at all.
Wow.
Sorry, no.
Awesome.
I tell a lie. I did have one coffee in that time.
Wow.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And it made me feel bad, so I didn't do it again.
Oh, really? You didn't even enjoy it?
No.
Good lesson.
I've only smoked crack once since New Year's too. So.
Excellent. Good.
But it made you feel bad.
It's hard to get. There's with this COVID lockdown, it's hard to find a good drug dealer these days. Who knew, right?
You got Signal. You got to use Signal.
Right.
That's it.
Well, you guys want to tear apart that article a little more so we scan it over, see if there's any more pieces we need to hit.
I do want to. So I saw this doctor guy. I guess that's
Doctor guy.
Dr. Mike Malloy. I guess that's the founder of Nutrition Coach Business. I'm surprised he's writing this up with all the knowledge there is nowadays, especially after what Bart says. To me, I'd be embarrassed to put my name on that stuff, right?
It was a lazy article.
Mm-hmm.
It was terrible. It was dreadful. The bit I wanted to hit, guys, was the statement. It says, if you don't eat carbs, then what you're going to do is you're going to separate your muscles, meaning you're going to dissolve your muscles and use your muscles for energy.
I love the terms.
Yeah, I mean, are we that, for want of a better term, naive, that we would possibly believe that the human body evolved in such a way as to store excess energy as fat on our bodies. When we take in more energy effectively than we actually expend effectively, we store that as fat. Everybody knows that. But if we take in less energy than we require, so let's say we cut out carbs, why would our body then not use the fat that we stored before it starts even thinking about burning any muscle, the very thing that is our structure that we're made of? Jason Fung, I think, or Fung covered it best when he said, why would the body be that inane that it stores excess energy as fat, but then when there isn't excess energy, it burns itself instead of the fat that it stored?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
rule me that.
It's,
Right?
it's absolutely ridiculous. I read that and I nearly fell off my chair. I could not believe that
His
is
body's going to cannibalize its muscles, so it can't carry around the fat that it
right.
won't burn.
Exactly. Goodness
And
me. Are we?
That's
Store it as not only as
Cannibalism.
fat, we store it as saturated fat. We don't
Oh,
store it
yes.
as polyunsaturated fatty acids. We store it
But Brooke, how do we burn saturated fat without clogging our arteries?
You don't have to worry
how's
about
that
your
possible?
arteries. You just have to worry about your sink drain. That's the only thing you have to worry about with those saturated fats is your
Right.
kitchen.
Now, to be fair, there is an autophagy effect that does break down old proteins. So that part, I guess, if you want to get into the nitty gritty, so it kind of does break down. But those are cells that's not going to be really used anyways, right, Bart?
Yeah, dead right.
You want,
Yeah.
We need to
you
get rid
want that. You
Right.
want that. Yeah, that's your cleanup.
Mhm.
of
Right.
Yeah.
Well, don't
But
they
also, if you've already,
oh,
go ahead, Charmaine.
Oh, I
Go
was going to say, didn't Dr. Jason Fung also say that when you fast, it does promote growth hormone and actually preserves your lean muscle mass?
Absolutely. Yep. And then, if you go a step further than that and you do some fasting, that'll also increase your release of adult stem cells a bit too, which is a great thing.
Is that a good thing?
It's a great thing. Yeah, it's a great thing.
What is that? What'd you call? You said adult stem cells?
Adult stem cells, yeah. So they're a population of stem cells that you have in your body. They're with you when you're born. They'll be with you when you die.
Yeah.
You can never ever run out of these things. But
Isn't there a limited amount of them?
no, because every time you release some, the process by which you release them is a binary cell division process. The master cell permanently remains behind where the stem cells live, which are in places like in your bone marrow, in the dermis under your skin. There are some in your liver. There are some in some other organs as well. There are some in your brain stem. There are all sorts of different populations of stem cells around your body. Their job is to be released as and when they are needed to replace and or repair cells that become damaged or are in need of complete replacement. And that's what adult stem cells do. So you can't ever run out of them. But what does happen is as you age, you are genetically programmed to have a harder time releasing them from your bone marrow or from your brain stem or from the dermis under your skin, whatever. And that's one of the reasons that you age, become decrepit, and eventually will shuffle off this mortal coil at some point. So fasting is one of a number of policies, what a number of things that you can undertake that will encourage you to start reinvigorating your ability to release these cells. So there you go.
And intensive workouts help do that too.
Yep, intense workouts can do it. There are also a number of, well, actually one really good supplement product available that can assist with that as well. There are a bunch of people selling supplements that claim to be good in that respect, but there's actually only one that does so. It's the one that most of us here are involved with, of course. So there you go. There is Tom. There's mine. Tom's got his. Where's yours, Becky?
Upstairs.
Mine's out in the other room.
Yeah,
Other
mine's
room.
upstairs.
I don't know. Excuses. Okay, so all the cool kids are on this stuff. It's called Stem Enhance Ultra. You could contact myself, or you could contact Thomas. You could contact Ray. You could contact Becky.
Is this
one of us.
a pyramid scheme?
Oh, absolutely. You bet. Yes, it's a pyramid scheme. Yes,
It is a pyramid scheme. That's a negative part.
it's a complete have. No, it's a really good, really solid, legitimate business opportunity for those that want to. Yeah, and again, those that are taking it, they can take it as a customer. There's no compulsion to run around and evangelize the world or anything like that. I do though, because actually that product saved my life, I believe, although I'm not allowed to claim that. Anyway, you can contact any of those people and they will give you more information on that. Let's stay on topic for today.
No, can we just take a minute and see and tell me what the mechanism is?
Yeah, this particular product contains an active ingredient which directly cuts the protein chain that holds the daughter adult stem cell to the master adult stem cell. The master stem cell is permanently bound to the bone marrow and never leaves the bone marrow. It's the daughter cell that gets released, but you need something to cut the chain that holds it there. And this is a product that does that, basically. That's the mechanism.
That's great.
I tell you, it's got a great placebo effect. So I've been taking it now for.
Oh, here he goes again. He thinks it's a placebo still.
It's pretty neat.
I've been taking it for over a month.
Notice. Can you
about a month now, and it's been great. So
yeah.
like
So
what
what do
does
you
it
feel?
do? Like it gives you more energy, or what results do you notice?
Actually, that's what I noticed. So when I typically when I first start working out, like start doing karate, I get a little lull before I get that boost kick to get up. This one I was just instantly confident right after this, and I have not lost that. It's just stayed straight, and I'm taking a little less than the recommended dose. I'm only taking 2 a day. And I was surprised. So again, I'm chalking it off to placebo right now. But because Bart's the one that told me I should notice something in 6 months.
It's the biggest word he knows. Let him use it. Just kidding.
Yeah. Okay. So I've been taking it for 10 years. So I'm the longest standing consumer of this particular product in the group today. And my anecdote, there's no evidence, mind, it's just an anecdote. Anecdotes, just anecdotes, no evidence, mind. I was told 10 years ago by the top eye specialist in New Zealand that I had advanced age-related macular degeneration. And he said to me that he'd never seen a case that advanced in a man of my age at the time, which 10 years ago was 39. And he said, by the time you are 45, young man, you will be legally blind. Get ready for it. There's nothing we can do about it. It's going to happen. That's the way of it. Prepare yourself. Don't smoke. Don't drink. Don't eat saturated fat, he said. Take your healthy whole grains. Have a balanced diet, he said, of course. Don't let blue light into your eyes. Try not to get stressed. But I said, Doc, you've just told me I'm going to go blind. And he said, well, get over it. $200, thanks, basically. Anyway, I was 45 sort of 4 years ago, and my eyesight today is better than it was 10 years ago when I was told I will go blind by the top specialist in the country, by the way. I went to the optometrist about a month ago for another update on my prescription lenses. And I was a new optometrist because I'm living in a new city. So I thought, this will be funny. I'll say nothing. I'll just let this person discover my advanced macular degeneration for themselves. And the optometrist, because that's how I found out the first time. The first optometrist said, oh, not happy. I'm going to send you to a specialist. And the specialist said, yep, macular degeneration. So I sat down and they did the photos and had a look and stuff. And the optometrist did the tests. And then she said, okay, here's your new prescription. I said, oh, wow, that's less than my last one. She said, that's interesting. I said, yeah, it's interesting too. And then I just sort of waited. And then I said, so any issues with my eyes at all? Did you notice anything that might concern you? She goes, no, they look pretty normal for a man your age.
Wow.
Whoa.
Interesting, eh?
That was a
Wow.
10-year span.
Yeah. That's a 10-year span. But what I noticed was because I had started to notice my vision was failing. That's why I went to the optometrist in the first place to say, do I have any eye issues here? And they said, oh, God, yes, specialist, off you go. So that was about 6 months of taking this product. and by the way, this is before I discovered carnivore. I was on a standard diet.
Right.
Okay. I was eating the normal thing. I was overweight. I was unwell. I was, all of that stuff. So the only thing I changed was taking these crazy green pills, which I'm not allowed to claim are cause and effect, of course, because that's not allowed, because the FDA won't allow it. But at the end of the day, that is the only thing I changed in my lifestyle. Within 6 months, my eyes had miraculously repaired themselves in the face of being told by a specialist, no, that's not going to happen. You will go blind. Interesting. My 75-year-old mother has very severe ankylosing spondylitis, and she'd started to have a series of quite serious TIAs, which happens to women in my family at about her age, and that's usually about a 2 or 3 year slide into death at that time. Her sister was exactly the same. Her mother, my grandmother, was exactly the same as well, and her mother the same as well. So it's kind of set in stone there. Anyway, I got my mum on the stuff, which I had to pay for myself because she wouldn't believe me. I was, shut up, take them every day, just take them. Yes, I can afford it, Mum, shut up, take them. Anyway, she's been on it 2 months. And I went down to visit her and my sister and her family, who were all down at her second home on the coast at the beach for Christmas. Couldn't work it out for a while. Anyway, we walked up and down the beach with the dogs and the kids, and she had a spring in her step, and she was stood bolt upright with her chin up. She was laughing and carrying on and not hunched over, which she had been for 5 years because of the spondylitis. And I said, so the strokes, what's happening with that? She said, I haven't had one in months. In about 2 months, she said, my goodness, you haven't had a stroke in about 2 months, and you stood bolt upright, and your chin's up, and you're not in pain anymore, and you're laughing and skipping up and down the beach. Placebo, must be. So anyway, there you go.
Yeah, I started taking it because I was interested in a reduction of cytokines, stuff like that, and I just had a really nasty psoriasis outbreak, and I had all these huge lesions, and I was like, well, maybe it'll help grow that skin back faster, and stuff like that. So, but I immediately noticed like muscle volume increasing and stuff like that. I was like, whoa, I was blown away. So
no, placebo, Tom. Placebo.
It's a very powerful placebo effect, let me tell you.
I'll take it.
Yeah, good.
Yeah. Well, I have noticed a difference in my wife. She's been taking it also. A lot calmer, and it's not like she's changed really her diet. It's not like she really went more carnivore or anything like that. But she's
cool. It's powerfully anti-inflammatory as well, this stuff. Powerfully anti-inflammatory. So anyone with anxiety and that kind of stuff may well. Yeah, me too. I had very severe anxiety for years and years and years, actually, as well. So anyway, let's not hijack the whole talk about carbohydrates. I just thought I'd throw that in there. No, it was my fault. I started it.
Yeah.
Can't help myself. I'm so excited about this stuff.
Little tangent, little side route there. We'll get back on track.
Well, so let's talk about this doctor that puts his name on there. I wanted to read this part to you guys. He says, if a person is eating unintentionally or intentionally low carb, at the end of a really high intensity workout, they can end up in a pretty nasty place where they feel totally out of it, their body aches, or their head hurts, and they just want to lay on the ground and not move for 20 minutes. He continued, laying on your back covered in a pile of sweat might feel good in the moment. It might feel like you worked hard, but it is not a sign of an effective workout by any stretch of the imagination. What? It's like, what? Wow. And he says, if you don't eat carbs, your body will break down muscle.
Yeah.
I just cannot believe he put that on the article.
Didn't make any sense at all.
Yeah.
Nonsense.
I can't believe he put that on there. And he's a doctor.
Some of these people are the enemies of science.
Right.
If you don't eat muscle, then your body's going to break down muscle. Not if you don't eat bananas.
Exactly.
Hey, tell it to Freely.
Yeah.
I mean, muscle needs some muscle.
Hey, if you don't eat meat, then you're going to get rabbit starvation. Why do you think these vegans all slowly over years and years melt away into skeletons? That's the exact reason for it, because you absolutely must consume protein and fat to maintain any kind of muscle mass. Or the other way you can do it is to take anabolic steroids.
Or bone mass, even bone mass. You know, people can hang
Absolutely.
out as a
Yep.
vegan or vegetarian for decades. God knows I did for decades and decades, and then you know all of a sudden their teeth are rotting out, or they're breaking their bones, or.
Well, when I was vegan, even in just 1 month, my knees were hurting, my hair was falling out. I could not sustain it for more than a month.
Well, you did good. I couldn't do it for a week. I'm like, screw that. I actually did do it at the end of the week, but man, all I was doing was eating bread. Just
Oh my
to fill
God.
myself up. Yeah.
Breaditarian. Yeah, breaditarian.
Yeah, I was breaditarian. Well, that was vegan, right? So at that time, that's what I thought. I can eat bread. Yeah, that
Breaditarian.
didn't go well. Yeah,
That's the first one. The first time I heard
What
of
did
that.
you notice, Raymond, when you were eating bread? Like, what happened to you? Like, you were feeling weak, or how did
No,
you?
I got like twice as big, and I felt,
Oh.
I mean, I just couldn't do it. I mean, it was horrible. I was bloated all the time, and the bathroom part was not fun.
Oh my
God.
Everybody's favorite food, right, is bread, right?
Yeah.
It's the first thing everybody says when you say, "Yeah, I just eat meat." I could never give up bread.
Right.
Try and live on it though, right?
Yeah, horrible. Or rice, because that's what I did, bread and rice, and you know, I didn't like the greens, so like I said, I got way bigger. Ooh, that was
Ray the starchivore.
Yeah. Well, I never liked greens even back then, but I was like, all right, well, that's vegan. Okay, I can do that.
You know, I couldn't. My way of thinking these days is sort of like, you know, I really do think I'm starting to expand my view. I really think there is room for the consideration of carbohydrate, but I really think of it as carbohydrate as a medicinal protocol instead of a diet based on carbohydrate. It's a diet based on animal foods and medicinal uses of carbohydrate when it's called for. I mean, it's really sort of.
You mean cider, don't you, Brooke?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I definitely mean cocktail right now.
No, good.
Or herbs, spices, maybe.
Yeah, or even like with like, you know, like endurance athletes or whatever, when it's almost like what does it matter if they eat something with some carbohydrate as they're going to be running, you know, the Western States, you know, 100-mile run or something. It doesn't.
I feel like when I was doing like ultra marathons and stuff, you know, they would always talk about the carb loading and stuff, but I would have some carbs like before a really long race, like that ultra marathon I did. I would have like a low carb tortilla and almond butter and pecans, and that was my breakfast for like hours until like, you know, hours into the race. That's all I needed to eat. But I felt like the carbs did. I don't know. It's hard to tell. I don't know if the carbs will actually help with the performance, but if it was like a really high intensity thing for a long period of time, that's when I would eat carbs, like before, like the dinner before and then the morning of. But I didn't need any more than that though. But
and well, when I'm thinking of carbohydrates as medicinal usage of carbohydrate, you know, it would be really selective. In fact, it probably would not be nuts. I mean, I think nuts are really hard to digest, for instance, you know.
Yeah, you got to eat them in small quantities. At least most people do.
Yeah. And so it would be really very extremely digestible carbohydrate for maybe they need to raise glycogen in the liver to help their thyroid, things like that. So it's not changing the diet so much. It's sort of possibly employing other things medicinally.
And when we would assume that most pre-humans or early humans ate some carbohydrate at least seasonally, right? They might find some berries or find some honey or something, but so it's something we can.
Yeah, 100 grams a day apparently. 100 grams a day, says Paul Saladino. That's how much honey.
You know, I'd be surprised if you could get your hands on that kind of berry with all of the other creatures out there that's trying to get it too.
Yeah, good luck.
Yeah, good luck.
You have some roots, you know, you do have some like even in the Arctic Circle in Sweden, you know, the horseradish.
Roots, yeah.
Horseradish is always growing under the snow. It's always there to be found, for instance. So I would think if we were going to go back to what what our cave ancestors ate, I bet they employed plants. A lot of them probably died in finding those plants, medicinally, herbs or plants or berries or honey.
So
Well, the way I see it,
Is
diet.
go ahead.
I'm
Sorry.
curious how many grams of horseradish each one of us thinks we could eat in a day.
Ooh.
Right.
Honey. But something that potent, I'm sure it must do something. I mean, in the diet of the Nordic Arctic people, horseradish is used. It's used in sauces and used as a condiment on fish and reindeer and stuff. But so it's not. But it doesn't change, even with opening up to those thoughts. Doesn't change the fact that it's an animal-based diet.
Right. Absolutely.
Well, and I guess going back also to before, does it make a difference of not only the carbs, are between adding the bread and those type of carbs, or adding the different chains, such as like the avocado that has the fat that comes along with, the carbs, or the coconut, climb the coconut tree, those type of things. As like I said, as someone that is getting ready to add some of these in for an experiment, does that make a difference? In
Right.
the different chains of fatty acids and fermented foods, like you were saying, horseradish, sauerkraut, those type of things.
And coconut has a lot of sugars too. Has some usable carbohydrates in the water and stuff.
So I like that thought pattern, really, about our ancestors, about possibly doing that. But really and honestly, now that we have access to animal foods all the time, what would happen if we created this new human being that just ate meat and only meat? First of all, we need to ask, is that possible? Can they be born that way and that's all they eat for the rest of their lives? Will they be that much healthier than their counterparts who ate even a little carbs? And that's really where the big question comes in.
I don't think that. I think that you could, and they could be, and things would do well. But if without any of this study or thought or consideration, if you're out there with huge amounts of meat, but also exposed to certain plants or fruits, I don't mean groves of giant sugar-packed fruits that we have now, but berries or whatever. I would suspect that man would employ them.
Yeah, if they're laying around. But at the same time, we migrated into Northern Europe as the Ice Age set in, and we weren't even using fire yet. So we obviously weren't going for the plants. We were following the big.
We probably watched the plants just so an animal could come there, so we could shoot them.
Right. So hey, stay away from that berry bush. So they're bound to be walking in here any minute. Right?
That's it.
Right.
There's a really good segue, guys, into what we were talking about before we pressed record. There is a population of people up north of the Arctic Circle, the Inuit people, who evolved, if you like, or developed along the lines of really not being able to get into ketosis at all. And there's a lot of people who are using that as an argument to say, well, look, ketosis can't be good for you and it's not a good thing. Look, the Inuit have developed along the lines so that they can't do it. And so I thought I'd cover that one briefly. And then after that, I will have to actually tag out, guys, because I've got a paid client hour coming up at past. But anyway, here it is for you. The Inuit have a gene that allows them to provide for energy for the brain from their fat sources without producing ketones. And the reason for it, it seems to me, when you look through all the anthropological data and stuff and you read through all of that, if you go into ketosis and stay in ketosis constantly, chronically, day on day, week on week, month on month, that can mess with your thyroid function. It can cause thyroid damage. It's not a good thing to be in ketosis all the time. And that's why it always annoys me when these people are posting all over the place. Oh, will this kick me out of ketosis? Oh, I've got to stay in ketosis. Being in ketosis is where it's, no. The goal of a ketogenic diet is not to be in ketosis. The goal of a ketogenic diet for most people is to lose fat off your body. The way it's gauged generally is by having a measurable level of ketones in either your urine or your blood, depending on what you're testing. And that's gauged as the marker of success. And so therefore we can market all sorts of things to you like keto sticks and keto test kits and all that kind of stuff and make money out of you and tell you stay in ketosis all the time. Don't eat anything that'll kick you out of ketosis. Actually, if you think about where human beings live for the most part, which is between, the Arctic and the Antarctic Circle, for most people in there is an amount of carbohydrate, as we've been talking about. A small amount. The N15 data tells us basically on human skeletal remains that people that live within those two circles typically will eat 80, well, up until the last 5,000 years when we started growing wheat anyway. Before that, human beings were eating 85 to 95% carnivore. Slam dunk, not even a question. The N15 data shows it. It's in the protein in those bones. That's what those people did eat. So no guessing, no looking at teeth. No, I'm not a carnivore because I don't have all that going on. We ate 85 to 95% carnivore. The 95% people lived at the equator, at the higher levels, and the 85% people lived at the equator and in reverse in the south, in the southern hemisphere, basically. Makes sense, of course, because of the ice age and all that kind of stuff. So that's how that one all develops there. So the Inuit have developed another metabolic pathway which bypasses ketones, thereby allowing them to use fat for energy because there's no carb intake. And because the Inuit could not cycle in and out of ketosis because there were no plants, that would have stuffed up their thyroids. So natural selection came up with an answer, and the answer was this other metabolic pathway. And by so doing that, it negatively impacted their ability to get into ketosis. That's why Inuits can't do it. So there you go.
So it was thyroid protective.
Correct.
And we don't know how many generations or hundreds or thousands or millions of years it took to develop that.
Or can we adapt? Can we become like that?
Well, not any one given individual, because it's a genetic change. It's a genetic drift over probably at least
hundreds of thousands.
I'm guessing probably over at least a dozen generations or more to get a reasonable change going on there. And what you'll find is that the people that had that adaptation going for them survived, and the people that didn't had thyroid problem and died out. So that's natural selection. It's Darwinian, basically. And I'm probably thinking, a couple of dozen, maybe up to 50 generations for it to become fixed. So that's what happened there. But for those of the rest of us that are not Inuit, that did not come from stock that comes from up there, it is a good idea for you to cycle out of ketosis regularly.
Yeah. I wonder what would happen if they examined people like the Sami in the same way. These people live in the far north and they live on primarily things like caribou, which is kind of similar to what the Inuits eat. I wonder if we would find the same adaptation.
We might find the same adaptation, but you don't find the same diets like that anymore.
No, and it's also hard to communicate with. It's very, very hard to communicate with the Sami because they don't actually tend to use words. They tend to, for yes, they go.
Well, they do.
They can't be bothered actually saying words. They sit in the bar and go.
But there's stores there now. I mean, and often, like many indigenous folk, when they were, when they were given alcohol, it really hurt. They can't. They really had a hard time with alcohol, and it really hurt that population, which I think must have something to do with some kind of adaptation as well.
Yeah. Mm. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, guys, it's been a pleasure as usual. Thank you for the invite to be here. I enjoyed it. I hope I
Everybody.
didn't
you,
completely
Bart.
take over the show, but it's always fun to talk to fellow carnivores and to share ideas. I'm going to patch out. As I say, I've got a paid consultancy hour in about 15 minutes. See you around the traps.
See you at a Pam.
Thank you, Bart.
All right, I'll say hello to Pim. Yes, absolutely. All right, see you guys.
Take care, buddy. Before
I
we
gotta get running too, though. Actually,
okay, that's all right. No worries. It's good to see you. Glad you're here.
Good to see you. This is a fun topic. I was just like, oh, I have to say something. This is not true. So thanks for inviting me.
Anytime.
Hey, nice to meet you,
nice to
Becky
meet
and
you.
Brooke.
So nice to meet
Bye.
you.
I see you again for me.
I just wanted to hit that article. There's a couple of things I noticed in the language that I thought was odd, and I was wondering if you guys thought it was odd. But did you notice that it said it describes something as activity influenza, and then also it prompted muscle misfortune.
Separate. Yeah, muscle separate. Was it? Muscle
Well, it said that too. Your body will separate muscle.
Right. An activity influenza.
Yeah.
Activity flu. It's like these new terms that
New terms describe things that aren't happening. Right. I mean, yeah, if you suddenly went carnivore and you're used to a typical diet, you haven't adapted to it. Sure. You're not gonna feel good, right? But
I tell everybody, for your first 2 weeks, if you insist on working out, do it at a 70% pace because you're gonna hurt yourself. So, yeah, you just have to adapt.
so how about this article?
Maybe it was me, but it seemed like that they were really similar. Like the second one kind of was saying the same thing. You need to eat these carbohydrates or you'll have.
Wait, wasn't it the one about the women fasting? Was that not the second one?
No, that was the third one that somebody threw in there. We haven't.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah. So,
I actually thought it was written by the same person, was it?
it might have been. Yeah. I
Because
didn't know if everybody got a chance to read that third one, so I just started with the first two.
I mean, the first two were they written by the same person? Because I think.
No, I don't know. This one says Mike Malloy on it. The other, but it's. I'm not sure if that's who posted it or who put the. Sometimes it says the first person title is actually the person who posted it there and not the author, and you got to look. And this one says Rachel Hosey and Mike Malloy. So I don't know if that's exactly how the credit is.
They're paying a lot of people that aren't even very good writers to write these hit pieces about
right
carbs. I mean,
yeah, I think any one of us could outright them for sure. I might have to have Justin spell check me, but I'm pretty sure I can outright him. So, yeah. But this one, performing high intensity exercise on a low carb diet can lead to various negative consequences. This includes exercise flu, which sounds a little more common than was that?
But that's activity influenza.
Activity
exercise
influenza,
flu. It's the same thing.
Right. And muscle loss through gluconeogenesis, right? How sick do you have to be before you're cannibalizing your muscles for some glucose? It'd be some rough.
It's so funny because I think it's like the opposite. You have to eat, if you're on a vegan diet, you will be cannibalizing your muscles.
Yeah, what exactly do vegans make muscle out of? They've got to be eating this massive blend of plant proteins to try and come up with enough amino acids to rebuild muscle. And still, there's certain things like whatchamacallit, what am I thinking of? Carnosine, carnitine, and leucine don't exist in the plant world. So they're just going to have to take an artificial form of that, or they're going to have to use an animal source.
Right.
Well, B12, they're going to have to take a supplement.
They have to.
Right. So, yeah. Your exercise performance is limited without carbs. I think we kind of already hammered that. So, Yeah, this one, okay, so this is attributed to Dr. Mike Malloy, a nutrition coach who works with Olympians, CrossFit athletes, and founders of nutrition coaching business, M2 Performance Nutrition. Your body needs carbohydrates to perform at high intensity. So if you don't eat any, you may suffer from what's known as exercise flu and lose muscle too.
Activity influenza hits again.
So the only people I hear of that their muscles really start breaking down rapidly are people trying to set records. Like, I don't know if you guys followed the guy who wrote you can't hurt me.
Yeah, David Goggins.
Yeah, David Goggins, and he's doing the pull-up, trying to break the pull-up record.
Yeah.
And he started suffering from rhabdo and stuff like that. You know, we're talking like super extreme stuff. And so there are those outlying examples and stuff like that, but how many people actually are going to actually have a situation where they're doing pull-ups for 2 days straight or something, you know?
Sean.
What's that, Sean?
Sean.
Yeah, right. It mentions Barry's Boot Camp, Orange Theory Fitness, and F45 in here. Let's see. Exercise choice may really moderately really does have a big impact on the type of fuel you should be using in your body. He said, if you're doing intense workouts like CrossFit, Metcons, metabolic conditioning, Barry's Boot Camp, Orange Theory, Fitness, F45, or any other high intensity interval training, this is a high intensity aerobic exercise that requires carbohydrate fuel. What say you, Mr. Orange Theory?
That's what I do. I mean, like I said, I will do my Orange Theory, and then half an hour later I'll go into my karate and then jujitsu right after that. So, you know, like I said, it doesn't slow me down at all.
And sometimes
And on a fasted state. Yes.
fasted state for you.
Typically I like my best ones are in the 20th hours, but I'll go up to 40 some hours doing all that. I have done it before, let's put it that way.
Right.
Well,
So,
and I think the other point of this article that, you know, they ended up and talked about dropping calories too low, but you're also talking about fasting. Fasting isn't necessarily the issue as long as you're getting the refeed in there.
that's it.
You know, that refeed is just as important. So even though, you know, you kind of maybe you're doing an alternate day or you're fasting, you know, and only doing OMAD, as long as that meal that you're getting in there is the good quality protein and fats to replenish, then, you know, I think that's where because they're talking about calorie restricting. Well, we already know calorie in, calorie out, you know, has kind of been washed away by the wayside already. So, you know, I think that is part of the article that they're trying to point through there is if you're low calorie, even though, you know, they're thinking low carb, high fat, but you also got protein in there as a factor. So as long as you're keeping your caloric value up, then, you know, you're not going to have issues.
Sure. Yeah. And I mean, obviously all fasts are not created equal, you know. Fast for 24, 48 hours, big difference from, you know, fasting for a month or something like that. So vastly different. I like how they get into, you know, suggesting that if you're not eating carbohydrates, your brain's going to starve because your brain requires carbohydrates, and somehow they don't never talk about your body's ability to make its own glucose, right?
Well,
They use the word glucogenesis, but then they don't really explain. They don't really talk about it,
right?
Or that how it's used, or why it's used, or that it's used.
Right. And we did anybody here not experience greater mental acuity and lack of brain fog and all that when they went carnivore? If anything, our brains work a lot better, right?
Yeah,
exactly.
And fasted, actually.
And fasted as well. Correct. Yeah. So yeah, they make it sound like if you're not eating carbs and because your brain needs the glucose, all of a sudden you're going to start breaking down muscle in order to create, and as though that is the only way the body can make glucose is through gluconeogenesis, through the scavenging of protein from your muscles. There's a long way from the facts.
And not that the gluconeogenesis is a negative thing, but also the fact if you're only eating meat and fat on a carnivore or even a keto lifestyle and you're keeping, those carbs low, the brain thrives on the saturated fats. It's 70% fat. So it doesn't necessarily, need a lot of the gluconeogenesis to thrive either. So they're making it sound like your brain stops if you don't have carbs, and that's just not the case.
Yeah, your liver will make more than enough glucose without breaking down your muscles to keep your brain going. And it's the evidence seems pretty clear that one of the issues with like Alzheimer's and other forms of dementia, and also just making mental disorders worse, like schizophrenia and stuff like that. There seems to be this thing that people on a high carbohydrate diet get insulin resistance in the brain, and then the brain is not properly filled with enough glucose, and then you see acetate levels rising. It seems to be sort of the alternate sort of fuel source for the brain. But then when they put people on low carb or carnivore or Atkins like diets, and even diseases like schizophrenia get better, right? So and that insulin resistance to the brain seems to go down. So there's something in there going on like that. They don't even discuss that. They say the brain needs glucose, but they make it sound like the only way we're gonna be able to do it is by eating carbs. And
yeah. And then mention the word gluconeogenesis, but they don't actually bother to explain what it is and how our body, how it works, which would actually have been a great offering for the reader if they just explained that process.
Right. So anyways, have we sufficiently hammered this, or did you guys have more to
Well,
say?
I just wanted to say one more thing, sort of like it's not even, I think the times that we maybe can benefit from some kind of a carbohydrate as medicine isn't even the times when you're working out. It's the opposite. When you're working out, your body is just like in the groove and kind of knows what to do, and you can burn fat and it's happening. It's maybe those other times that when you're maybe trying to sleep and you're not getting good sleep, or during early stages of pregnancy, or some other time when the body's asking or requiring something else. So it's kind of funny, because it might be true that the body could really use carbohydrate in certain times, but it didn't hit the right time.
Right. Yeah, I could say from personal experience that, I do way better in the gym on carnivore than I ever did before. Obviously if you're somebody who's used to a standard diet, maybe having some carbohydrate at the right time is going to help you, as opposed to eating a steak like we would do, because you're not adapted to it. And I know I made the mistake of, I was buying a bunch of food because I was having a company over. I bought some pretzels and I ate them on the way to the gym. And I got on the rowing machine and bonked like the worst I'd ever bonked. I was like, just from a handful of pretzels, how could this be? But I'm just so not used to eating stuff like that, right? And then I went to lift, and I was like, it just didn't feel right. I pushed through the lifting, but the rowing was a disaster. I mean, when you can't even do an average row, and that's high intensity. I mean, I don't know if anybody else has ever done a 500-meter row. That's gonzo, everything you got, ignoring every alarm going off from your head to your toes, just pulling as hard as you can with your whole body. That's about as intense an interval training as you get, as far as I know. It's right up there with an air bike or whatever. So yeah,
that bonking that you experienced, which I experienced like several days ago when tried to do this little honey experiment, and I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
It kind of shows you how, people complain about, gosh, getting fat adapted takes, it's so hard to do, and look what it does. Well, your body, when all of a sudden you're eating this kind of carbohydrate, just bonks when you're trying to do something. So it actually shows that going the other direction was extremely uncomfortable.
Yeah, I think I'd probably trigger a big insulin release or something, then I was toast.
Yeah, I guess you triggered this.
Yeah. Sharp spike.
I guess.
Exactly.
Me too, yeah. That didn't feel good.
Apparently, Becky went to get a snack. She must have been hungry.
Yeah, she went to get some fat sticks.
All right, guys. Well, it was another joy recording with you folks. Did you
I
have
didn't
anything?
anticipate. I had crazy people driving around my house, so
Did you go out and let a couple rounds loose, warn them off?
got my husband on that.
Oh.
All right. All right, guys. Well,
No,
I
it
wanna
was great,
thank
guys.
everybody for showing up. I had a good time. I hope to see you guys all soon, and we hope this video means something to people out there, helps some people out there. Maybe send a link out to people who are enjoy it or benefit from it. And make sure you stay subscribed to the channel. Please subscribe and give us the old thumbs up because it really helps. Leave us a comment. Let us know what you thought of the video. Maybe you got some questions or you've got some topics you'd like us to cover in the future. And until next time, eat some meat, feel better, and whatever you do,
Don't fall down the
down
carb
the
hole.
Horrible.
all right.